Okay, we'll get going now. So welcome everybody again to our webinar today. And we are launching two exciting new products, Inventory Hub and Real-Time Retail. And we're very excited to be here with you. I'm going to take you through the agenda, introduce our speakers, and then pass it over to them. But if we take a look at the agenda, let's see what we're going to be covering today. So here's our agenda. So we're going to give you a quick update on Tools Group and the Tools Group business, for those of you not that familiar with us. And then we're going to talk a bit about the challenges that are facing retailers today. We'll introduce Inventory Hub by the founder and creator of the product himself. He's going to explain it to you, and then we're going to talk about how it can be applied in a real-time retail context. And I would ask everybody to stick around. This won't take very long. Our whole program will last about 40 minutes. So towards the end, we're going to have a short demo, but it's a really fun demo. So I ask you to stick around, and then we will be taking questions. And if you've got questions, you can see in the there's a question chat capability. Just post your questions, and then we will read them off as we get to the end of the program. So if we go ahead one more slide, we can see our speakers today. So we've got with us Ina Kuznetsova, and Ina is our CEO and the leader of Tools Group. We've got Sahil Gupta, and Sahil is the founder of Onira and one of our chief product leaders and strategists. And then we've got Brett Beaver, and Brett was the head of product for the Just Enough solution and has just been promoted to the vice president of technical sales. So you've got a really wonderful lineup today of experts who are going to take us through this. So Ina, why don't you start with a short update on Tools Group?
Thank you very much, Kevin. Let us go to the next page. First of all, welcome everyone. We really appreciate the time that you took to spend with us and get an update on our new products. At Tools Group, we see our mission in making the supply chain a force for good. And what that means is making it sustainable and making it efficient, avoiding the empty shelves, avoiding angry customers asking, where is my site or where is the baby food? But at the same time, avoiding extra emissions when shipping products from one store to another, avoiding transporting excessive goods to the stores, avoiding excessive discounting or landfills. And for us, it's a very important mission, and we moved that intent from a regional focus on manufacturing and industrial to retail. Many of you attending this webinar are our customers. And first of all, I wanted to say thank you so much for your business and for your long-term partnership. We appreciate it. We want to stay your partner long-term in retail planning. But another important thing to mention is that in addition to using our regional engines optimization for retailers, Tools Group made two acquisitions last year in the retail space. One is Just Enough, and another one is Onira. And many of you came to us through those acquisitions and may have a question, what happens to Just Enough, what happens to Onira product? And I wanted to assure you that they have found a very good home in Tools Group. The retail space is strategic for us. We made those acquisitions because we got, with Just Enough, we got the suite of applications that is the most robust in the industry, the only integrated suite between financial planning, replenishment, and assortment, created for retailers by retailers, and providing the most extensive set of functionality. And then, of course, with Onira, we got the prototype of the product, which we'll be introducing today, and Sahil will talk to you about it in a few minutes, the dynamically unified data to capture internal signals and plan your retail replenishments and assortments. Tools Group today operates in over 45 countries. We have about 300 employees, over 365 customers. Many of them are big retail chains. You may have seen our recent press releases about Karl Lagerfeld and Belcorp joining as our customers. And we see our intent in helping you to implement artificial intelligence powered dynamic planning and execution solution, leveraging real-time data from across the enterprise to make the better decisions faster. Before we move to the product discussion, I wanted to highlight why it is so important for us. It is important because it's a key for our vision for moving from static planning to dynamic planning, and then further on to guided navigation and automation. What that means is that today we offer the full suite of solutions, but it runs batches. And until you run the batch, you do not know if your flagship store runs out of the best-selling product during the sales day. With the real-time retail, you can see and replenish in time to avoid missed sales. Moving from static to dynamic for us means creating the opportunity to do merchandising at the web speed, providing dynamic allocations, providing dynamic replenishments and fulfillment based on the real-time view of the inventory across all ERPs of warehouse management systems and other systems in the enterprise. And we think that by doing this, we also will start enabling our vertical integrated retailers to get a better coordination between manufacturing, distribution, and the retail part. But dynamic planning is not the end game, right? We think that we will move further with the industry to enable the guided navigation, having multiple optimization engines optimize the retail process short-term and long-term, similar to how you use Waze when you drive, when multiple engines optimize the way and provide hints and tips and the best route based on the criteria that you have set. And that's what we're striving towards. And of course, that leads us to the nirvana, which is full automation wherever possible. I know you can never automate exceptions, but if we can take a lot of mundane tasks of people and specialists, they can do a much better job with the exceptions or special situations. So this is why we'll be talking today about moving from static planning to dynamic planning, about using that dynamically unified data capture platform, which we'll call Inventory Hub, and its integration with our Just Enough suite of applications to provide this web-based speed of retail. Turning it over back to Kevin, I know you want to hear about the products themselves, so we'll jump right in.
Yeah, let me just set the stage a little bit with the challenge that everyone in the retail industry is faced with. If we click ahead. So of course, I think we all follow the results of all the public retailers very closely. And if you saw at the end of Q3, it wasn't great news. You know, we saw the same story over and over again. Levi's growing revenue, but missing their earnings because they've got too much inventory on hand. Target, 87% hit to operating margins as it resets inventory. Nordstrom, sales and profits dip. Target actually had a pretty good fourth quarter, but Target was able to respond and react and shift their inventory from discretionary items into their produce and food items and kind of level set things. But you know, there is a challenge occurring here, and it's funny. I went to the U.S. government and pulled some data, and if you look at the chart on the right, you can see the ratio of sales per store, and you can see how that inventory level has just skyrocketed in the back half of 2022. We're back to like 2006, 2007 levels. And think of it like a pendulum swing, right? When things are tough and you're going through COVID and demand is kind of spiking, then everybody feels stockouts are a problem, so we carry more inventory, but then suddenly it's too much inventory, and now we're going to overreact, and the inventory is going to swing back, and the pendulum swings back, and this is the vicious cycle that we want to really get out of. And so if we could go ahead to the next slide. What do we need here? We need precision. We need better precision and faster response times in both forecasting and inventory management. And our goal, it seems easy, right? We've got to keep our stock levels closer to actual demand, but it's actually really complex in this omni-channel world that we live in, and with inventory every place, right? It's hard to keep track of this. And the older technologies that exist they're not up for the task. So what do we need? There's really a couple things that are essential. One thing we need is a real-time view of inventory, right? An accurate up to the moment, real-time view of inventory across all channels and warehouses. But then that's not enough. Then you need a system to take action on the events that are occurring, the actions that you see. And then in addition to that, you need really good forecasting, because you've got to be able to predict. And the real-time demand signals help with those predictions. And if you've got faster reactions and you've got better understanding of what inventory you've got where, and you can move that where it needs to be in the moment, well, then you can carry less inventory. Then you can better match demand with supply and eliminate a lot of the waste that occurs today. And that's what we're introducing today, Inventory Hub and Real-Time Retail. It's really to help you get off this pendulum swing, to bring more precision to your business and to be more efficient, right? And ultimately to make more profit, which we are all here to do. And if you go ahead to the next slide, we have a close relationship with Gartner, and we're always talking to them about the trends and things that are occurring and getting their input on where we need to go. And one of the hot things that Gartner talks about is unified commerce. And in their Gartner Top Retail Trends they put out in the end of November in 2022, it was really all about unified commerce and how can you get there? How can you move from a product-centric view to a customer-centric way to manage your business? And the first thing they said was the essential component is a single centralized platform that connects the dots across systems. Think about it. Most retailers, unfortunately, as you've built different components of your business and added online components, we've got a lot of silos. You've got to break down those silos. And so Inventory Hub does this, and Sahil will talk to you more about it. Second thing Gartner says is that you really need much more precision in your demand forecasting, because you want to carry smaller assortments better tied to what it is the customers are specifically looking for. And you'll see as you can just see as we talk about Inventory Hub and how that can connect into demand, and the picking up of real-time demand signals, how that can help in this process. The third thing Gartner talks about is better in-store fulfillment. How can you better use the inventory you've got? How can you better decide what should go where and how customer orders should be fulfilled? And we're going to talk about something we call dynamic fulfillment, which is fulfillment, but powered by real-time insights into inventory and demand. And then the final thing in the Gartner trends was really a call to action for every merchandiser, which is you got to think different. You got to think different. You can't make small incremental changes. You got to make some big changes to stay current in today's market, and real-time retail gives you the power to do this. So that's the stage setting, and I'm going to now pass it over to Sahil. And Sahil, why don't you share with us what Inventory Hub is and how it came about?
Sure, happy to do so. Good morning, everyone. So we've obviously talked a little bit about what we're doing at Tools Group and our vision, and also how we envision ourselves helping retailers. So as Kevin mentioned, a lot of this starts with our ability to have a precise view of data. And we do that through what we call Inventory Hub. So if you go to the next slide, what I wanted to do is actually start off by sharing a little bit of a perspective on why Inventory Hub is important, or what the problem is that we're trying to solve in order to be able to get better and more precise data. And it really starts with actually a very simple trend. And that trend is probably something as retailers you all are very familiar with, which is really twofold. One, we're seeing a massive proliferation of where consumers and our customers shop, and specifically the channels through which they shop through. So you have either you're a brick and mortar retailer and your customers are coming into your brick and mortar store, but now you're an omni-channel retailer. And so you have a website, you have a mobile application, you might have marketplaces through which you sell through. And so what you're seeing is you just have a lot of different touch points which your customers are interacting with you as a brand or retailer through. And that means at each one of those touch points, you actually need to have inventory and an accurate view of that inventory. On the flip side, actually, as you think about consumer expectations and the Amazon effect, you're seeing consumers expect faster and free delivery. A few years ago, 2-day delivery was the norm. Now it's actually becoming next day delivery, and same day delivery is becoming much more common. And so what that's doing is it's putting a lot of pressure on our supply chain. And very specifically, it's requiring us as retailers to create a number of different capabilities through which we can actually fulfill customer demand. And that includes actually increasing the number of locations through which we manage inventory. So that means either more distribution centers, or it could mean actually leveraging stores as fulfillment centers. And that also means that we actually have to expose inventory to different fulfillment capabilities. And so now we're not just shipping out of a warehouse, but we could also be shipping out of a store. We're enabling buy online, pickup in store. There's a lot of new concepts leveraging local demand and local carriers to actually provide faster and free delivery. And so what's happening is you're just seeing, again, a proliferation on the fulfillment side, on the supply chain side, to create better customer experiences, to create faster and free delivery. All of this, both on the demand side and on the supply side, is basically creating a lot of pressure and proliferating your supply chain. And so now, instead of having a very simple supply chain where you served a customer through one channel and you fulfilled through one location, you're now seeing multiple channels through which you need inventory, and you're also seeing multiple channels through which you need to store inventory or you need to fulfill inventory through. And this is creating a massive operational inventory challenge because it's creating a lot of fragmentation. And that's really the core of what Inventory Hub is trying to solve, which is trying to be able to reduce the fragmentation, because that fragmentation is creating a lot of discrepant views of data, data that you're actually using to sell to customers, to manage applications, to manage your systems. In addition to that, when you have a lot of discrepancy in the data that you have, you actually create limited visibility, you create limited accessibility in your ability to understand what's happening within your network. So if you have data across a warehouse, if you have data in a store, if you have data in different demand channels, you actually don't know what's happening. You don't know what supply is at any given moment in time. You don't know what demand is at any given moment in time. You don't know operationally what's happening. Is my warehouse at capacity? Is my store at capacity? And so again, this fragmentation really drives to that inaccurate visibility and limited accessibility. And last, and probably most importantly, when you have this fragmentation, what ends up happening is it becomes hard to make decisions. And very specifically, what ends up happening is you're making either latent decisions or decisions with inaccurate information or outdated information. And so these different issues, from either discrepant view of data to limited accessibility to latent view of data, which drives towards latent decision making, they all create operational inventory challenges, either in your ability to just enable unified commerce or in your ability to actually manage your inventory and make decisions on where you need to place inventory or where you need to fulfill inventory. So this is kind of the problem that we looked at when we built Inventory Hub, and this is what we're actually trying to solve. So if you go to the next page, what is Inventory Hub? At the end of the day, Inventory Hub is what we call the single source of truth for your operational inventory data. And very specifically, what this means is it's a single source of truth for supply, which is the ones and zeros of where you have inventory, demand, which is what is happening actually in your network, and also your operations. So all the ancillary data about your fulfillment capabilities or your supply chain capabilities, more broadly speaking. And Inventory Hub is really at its core a data service. So when you think about Inventory Hub, it's not an application, but it's a data service. And what that data service allows us to do is actually allows us to do a number of different things. It allows us, as Kevin pointed out, to create this unified view of data, which actually allows us to power a unified commerce experience. So as we think about all those different demand channels and fulfillment channels, Inventory Hub brings it together in a way where we can actually create a unified view of what we have and what we're selling. On top of that, and we're going to talk about that as it relates to real-time retail, but it actually allows us to then take that data to power inventory management at web speed. So we can take that data and we can specifically take the changes within our view of inventory to actually trigger actions. And those actions could either be actions related to where you put inventory or where you fulfill inventory. And that could be based on various insights of what's happening in your network. And the last thing, which is really important as you think about kind of where retail is going from a technical perspective, is as a data service, Inventory Hub actually allows you to create a composable architecture. And this is really important as you think about providing and enabling speed and agility in your network. And so if you have inventory at your fingertips, specifically as a developer, then you can do a lot of different things with that data. And it enables you then as a business, and specifically as a technical organization, to actually enable that speed and agility to then leverage inventory data how you see fit. So with all that in mind, what is Inventory Hub and what does it actually do? So Inventory Hub at its core tracks data from disparate systems. We call it siloed systems. And it does so in a way which we think is actually relatively unique. Very specifically, what we do is we listen to the events that are actually being emitted from these transactional systems. So take a very simple example, take a point of sale system. A point of sale system obviously is a system which is, consumers we all know and interact with, and obviously as retailers we invest a lot of time into managing. But those point of sale systems actually generate a lot of really rich data every single time a customer interacts with that system. Specifically, it generates an event such as a sale event, or it generates a return, which is a return event, or it tells you when something's being exchanged, and it tells you what items they're being exchanged for. And so this is really rich data, and it can tell you a lot about what's happening to your inventory. So what Inventory Hub does is we actually listen to those events, and we use those events to actually start to create this operational source of truth for data. And that's something that's really unique because it actually allows us to then cut all the middle systems out of the equation, and actually allows us to improve the fidelity of the data because we're listening to the source system, we're listening to the transactional system, the system that's generating the changes in your inventory. So what do we then do with those events? So those events are very rich. With those events, what we can do is we can create various views of your inventory data. And those views could actually be across a number of different domains. They could include your supply, which is just kind of the ones and zeros of where you have inventory across various dispositions. It could include demand, and it also could include operations. So as a very simple example, if I take that point of sale system and I take a sale event, well, that sale event tells me something very simple, which is I've sold an item at a particular location and I've sold a certain quantity. And so with that event, I can actually update my view of inventory to say, well, I've sold 2 units of a certain sweater, and so I'm going to decrement that item and that location by 2 units. And I can do that in real time because the sale event is actually being emitted from the point of sale system the minute the transaction happens. And so there's a number of different examples of the views that you can generate, but it fundamentally relies on the ability to mine events and take those events to actually tell you what's happening within your supply chain. The last thing that we do with Inventory Hub, and this is really important, both as we think about real-time retail, but also as you think about how can you leverage Inventory Hub outside of real-time retail. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Inventory Hub at its core is a data service. And it's not an application, so it's not something that business users necessarily interact with, but it's something that technical teams interact with. And what I mean by that is once we've actually collected this inventory data and we've generated views of inventory and what's happening to your supply, demand, or operations, we expose that data. And so in order to solve the data fragmentation problem, and in order to unlock your ability to actually leverage this data to either get better visibility or make better decisions, we expose this data, and we expose this data through various kind of interfaces, APIs, webhooks, you name it, so that way you as a developing organization, or us internally as a development organization, can leverage that data to actually power destination systems or applications. So you can actually take this data as a very simple example and say, well, if I have a real-time picture of inventory, I can take this data and put it on my website, and I can power a program like a buy online, pick up in store program. Or I can take changes in my data, changes in inventory based on changes in demand, and I can actually use that to power a replenishment engine or trigger an allocation or tell me where I can fulfill something from. So we expose all this data to then be leveraged by downstream destinations or applications. And as I mentioned earlier, we really think this is powerful because it does a few things. It helps us enable that unified view of inventory, which can enable unified commerce, either from a selling perspective or from an inventory management perspective. And then more importantly, it actually enables developers internally at Tools Group across all our applications, but also externally, you, yourself, and your team. It enables you guys to use that data to then actually power applications that require inventory, or applications that require an up-to-minute view of demand or operations, so that you can have visibility, you can make decisions using this information at your fingertips. So that's Inventory Hub, and that's kind of what we built and designed it to do. How does it actually work, and how does it actually come together within your environment? So if you go to the next slide, basically what you can see is a very simple diagram of how you can actually leverage Inventory Hub. And it's, again, very simple. It's a data service. And it's really focused on doing a few things, which is, one, tracking inventory data from these source systems. That could be, again, a point of sale system, an order management system, a warehouse management system, you name it. We have the ability to actually listen to events from each one of these systems. We've created an abstraction for the events that exist and how to actually interpret those events to understand its implications on various views of data. And we take those events and we actually run it through our data platform. Our data platform is built in the cloud. It's multi-tenant, it's highly scalable, it's highly redundant, it's secure. And we use that to then mine these events to generate these views of data. We also layer on top of this the ability for you as a business user to configure how you actually want to use that data. So as a very simple example, if you actually are tracking inventory availability through Inventory Hub, we can actually give you the ability to then set various configurations, such as eligibility of inventory or safety stocks for inventory. And that in a unified way will then get propagated downstream to all the destination systems and applications that then leverage Inventory Hub for data. And then, as I mentioned, and I just alluded to, the last piece of Inventory Hub is what we call Serve. And this is, again, when you think about it as a data service, is really the ability to take the data that lives within Inventory Hub, and we actually try to expose as much data as we can. We don't believe it makes sense for us to actually hide data back. We believe the data is yours, and we believe that our job is really to solve the data fragmentation problem. So our goal ultimately is to serve this data to any destination system or application. Internally, we actually then serve this data to all of our applications in retail. So the ones that Ina mentioned, from JustEnough all the way through to the ones that we built at Onera. We actually serve this data to these applications to then trigger real-time actions. But we can also actually serve this data to any one of your internal destination systems. Those could be your website, it could be a mobile application, it could be a marketplace, it could be an internal application that you built, for instance, for clienteling purposes. It could be through any marketing channel, your search channels, or your paid social channels. The goal really, again, is to make inventory available to any destination system. And Inventory Hub helps you do this and helps you do so in a unified way. So with that, I wanted to, again, make sure everyone had context for what Inventory Hub is solving, what it does, how it works. And I'm going to pass it off to Brett, who's actually going to talk a little bit more about what we call real-time retail. And real-time retail is basically how we within Tools Group start to leverage this data to actually help you as a business better manage inventory.
Thanks so much, Sahil. So yeah, we're going to talk about and kind of do a little bit of show and tell here as to what exactly the real-time retail solution looks like, how we're going to be leveraging Inventory Hub in order to enhance some of the retail planning capabilities. We could go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of a story here. I wrote this a while ago, but it's actually something that's sort of come true. So hopefully this will resonate with a couple of you. So it's February. The winter thus far had been mild, and the demand models for inventory have gone pretty much to plan until all of a sudden they do not. A massive winter storm comes. People have started to panic buy, and your once stable inventory position is now put at risk for stockouts due to spiking demand and overconsumption of current stock. So what do you do? Well, with the real-time retail capabilities, you're already prepared. The idea here is that by being able to track with Inventory Hub the excess in additional demand due to the panic buying, we're able to capture those events and the changes across all of our selling channels. Inventory Hub serves that information to JustEnough. It's informed about the changes in context and in real time. We've built some additional logic into the JustEnough allocation and replenishment engines to be able to assess whether something is actually an impactful change or just the normal course of business. If something strays too far from the normalized inventory plan, then we'll want to respond. And so we respond by recalculating in real time, intraday, the inventory plan, the replenishment order recommendations, transfer order recommendations, and purchases. And we create a new inventory plan to put the stock where the demand is and make sure that we're doing so in a place where it is fulfilled. So what's the result of this? Well, the result is that you weather the storm, and you do so without having to hit the panic button. You can sit there and sip your coffee and know that you're well taken care of because the system has resilience to it. It has immunity to supply chain disruptions, and we're able to really go in there and preemptively take care of exactly what these kind of incident responses are going to require. Okay, next please. Let's talk a little bit about the real-time capabilities that are unlocked. So at the current state with our launch here of real-time retail, We are powering 3 capabilities: allocation, replenishment, and dynamic fulfillment. So all of these are going to be capabilities that are powered specifically by the Inventory Hub ability to serve that real-time data. We get an integrated, consistent, and streamlined view of inventory across all of our real-time operations. You can allocate and replenish in real time. It also lets us do things like move away from batch processing, be able to do intraday processing, move to eventual consistency models in our data model as well. We can go to dynamic fulfillment, and as Sahil mentioned, be able to set the point of fulfillment for an online order or a DTC order from the most ideal location. So this can be turning stores more into hyper-local DCs. We're looking for time to service as the lead operation that we want to achieve. We can do so in the most cost-effective way, whatever it is that's making the most sense for our business to be able to run. And then ideally, we can anticipate and react to disruptions instantaneously. So we always ensure that we're one step ahead of the volatility. Okay, go ahead and integrate this data into siloed systems to deliver that real-time and actionable view of inventory. We can hook this into a third-party order management system, ensure that optimal fulfillment, treat the stores again kind of like hyper-local DCs, where we've got that operational inventory that's at the locations that are going to be closer to where the customers are. We can then use that to have lower fulfillment costs, reduce our markdowns for stores that are potentially overstocked, and in short, be able to turn that inventory in those stores into increased profitability. Okay. And then the last thing we want to talk about is something that's a bit more of a planned future functionality, a roadmap item that we're really working on here to take the next step in our real-time retail journey, and that's to be able to help with a lot of the challenges that we see in returns. So dynamic returns management is really something that we're seeing as a trend across a lot of the industry, where the online purchases are then returned to the store, and it really can disrupt the assortments. So items are coming in, they're scanned back into the system, and now all of a sudden you have a broken size run or you have a broken color set in the store, and it's kind of just the store's problem. Well, the best way that we can help manage this is by having a visibility of that inventory, seeing where we are with out of tier assortment inventory, and then being able to action upon that to then make a fulfillment decision, or to be able to send back to a warehouse to support a purchase, or send to a reseller due to current inventory versus current selling trends. So the point of it is to get the goods back into circulation, get them back to the point where they're you're turning your inventory into cash flow, and being able to then manage that in a way that then helps to mitigate the cost of taking those returns back in at any point. Okay. Now I think we have a special treat, which is a short video from one of my sales engineers that's going to be able to show the real-time retail capabilities in the actual application, so you can see what it looks like today.
So by now you've heard a lot of the technological and potential around real-time retail, Inventory Hub, and dynamic fulfillment. There's obviously a lot of applications to what you want to be able to action during the day that range from fulfillment to pricing to any other kind of analytics around the inventory that you own. We did want to show you an example of how we've integrated this technology into our process. So this is a dashboard. It's intentionally a simplified dashboard that an allocator might see. So they've already done their typical daily allocations or weekly allocations. The system may have automated many of those, but now they've started to get notifications during the day that there are other things that they might need to action in order to preserve sales or to avoid stockouts. So this dashboard will come in. I can select in the top left whatever inventory or whatever product I'm responsible for. In this case, I've just selected all of the Class A apparel product, and I can see in the lower right what the most recent events look like. On the lower left, I can blow that up. I can actually see the items within the filter, which ones have been recalculated intraday and which items have not reached a threshold requiring recalculation. And then in the upper right, I can see what is the total amount of orders that the system is recommending based on that recalculation that I need to action during the day. So far I've obviously done nothing, but the recommended order quantity from the recalculations of those events is 1.21 thousand, so 1,200 units roughly. And from here, I can actually go ahead and just action the orders. So I hit generate order in the upper left. It's going to take those recalculated orders from real time, and it's going to generate for me an actual movement of that stock that I can then go ahead and action. So I can see all of the different sites that are requiring recalculation or the recommended order quantity that's coming out of that. If I need to do analysis here, I can, but ultimately it's as easy as that to go ahead and send off the order generated from real-time retail. I've now sent out 1,213 units that I otherwise would have missed or had to wait in order to get out to my stores.
Awesome. And that's one of the ways that you can see it working in real time and how you can take advantage of the capabilities and see exactly what we're hoping to see intraday. Okay. And I'll turn it back over now to Kevin. I think that we have
Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, please put them into the chat. We've got a couple of questions that have come in. Ina, the first question is for you, actually. I think you'd be the best one to answer this, which is, what do you see changing in retail planning in the coming years, right? What are some of the innovations people need to be aware of?
So I think, of course, this means different thing for different retail chains, right? For some of them, it's reducing the excessive inventory and going from basic Excel to an integrated professional retail system planning to do that, and implementing artificial intelligence agents for optimization. But if we do a step back, if we make a step back, if we look at the industry as a whole, over the last few years, the development of omnichannel and electronic commerce forced a lot of retail colleagues to master the omni-channel experience, provide the unified experience when we shop online, when we do BOPIS, when we do shopping in stores, and this is done. What has been missing in many cases is the unified or consistent supply chain coverage of omni-channel. Buying anywhere and fulfilling anywhere still remains a problem for a lot of chains. And I think that based on the unified dynamic data to capture those internal signals, a lot of retailers will be able to move not just to the web-based decisions when it comes to fulfillment and replenishment, they will be able to accelerate that move to the omni-channel supply chain consistency. And I think that's what we will see in the next few years. And of course, as we progress further, more automation will come into play.
All right, excellent. And then Sahil, a question for you around the, can the solution live on our corporate AWS cloud?
Yeah, it's a good question. So obviously, as a software company, a lot of what we do is predicated on our ability to continually develop and maintain our own products and maintain our own infrastructure. And so we do host all our solutions in our own cloud. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't work with you to figure out exactly what use cases you're looking to solve for and how that's going to play out. But we do host everything. The thing I will make sure to point out, though, is that as a data service, the real idea here is that you have, as a development team, the ability to track data in whatever way you want. So we have various APIs and interfaces that allow you to track data, and then we have various APIs and interfaces as well that allow you to actually access that data. So you really want to think of this as kind of a data service that we're building for you, and part of our ability to do so in an innovative way is that we obviously host it so we can continuously improve it. but we do expose it then so that you can use that service in whatever way, shape, or form that you want. In addition to, as we talked about, kind of our real-time retail capabilities, which are ways that we actually leverage your data to power additional applications and business use cases.
Awesome, thanks, Hill. And then Brett, we got a question for you. Doesn't the real-time inventory hub really depend on our ability to feed this real-time data into just enough? What is the technology doing differently from the existing capabilities?
Oh, that's an excellent question. So the things that it's doing here is really being triggered off of events. So the big difference here in kind of the normal operational integration method that's been in place for, let's be honest, decades, is doing that kind of overnight batch. We've had intraday feeds, but those are usually something that needs to be scheduled. And again, all that really is another batch, but the event-driven system of Inventory Hub, being able to communicate to just enough and say, hey, this happened and here's the impact, being assessed in real time, and then that actually triggers those recalculations. That's kind of the key differentiator here and what we're able to pick up. The other thing it does is it provides us with better accuracy. So being able to have this information at hand at all times gives us additional precision in what we're able to do rather than have to do reconciliations or have to look at other things. If something comes in and says, hey, this was a sale, and then it also comes through and says, also decrement 1, now we know we've got like the confirmation that it really was something that happened. So additional precision and better speed are the two kind of key differentiators in what we're able to pick up from that.
Excellent. And then a question, Sahil, has come in. I think this is for you. How does the solution interact with the SAP ecosystem where CAR is already implemented? I'm not sure if we know what CAR is, but how do we interact with an SAP ecosystem? Oh, you do? Okay, excellent.
Yeah, so a lot of these systems, SAP, Oracle, NetSuite, the way I think about them is they're traditional ERP systems. A lot of these traditional ERP systems, I think, have recognized what we've also recognized, which is the need to, instead of just creating a financial view of inventory, which is updated on a batch frequency, and then leveraging that data to then power these systems, to actually move to much more of a real-time system which can manage your operational inventory. I think a lot of these systems, very candidly, are sort of just sitting on top of the ERP system. So you still have a lot of plumbing that's the same, but some of the kind of outsides of that kind of look different to be able to kind of track the operational inventory data. The way we think about it is we've kind of built it from the ground up to really track events, track those events in real time, be able to process those, propagate those to downstream systems. It's open, and so again, you can leverage the data however you want. And the best way then that can interact with these ecosystems, specifically SAP, is then SAP can be a downstream consumer of this data. Once you create a view of inventory, once you track these events, we can then publish that to your ERP system or to any other downstream systems which you use for other purposes outside of some of the operational use cases that you might need to manage, such as financial use cases or even analytical use cases. We can publish this data to those systems to then be leveraged. So again, you want to think about this as a data service which kind of sits orthogonal to a lot of your inventory systems, specifically either your point of sale warehouse management systems or even your ERP systems. And this really becomes then a data service which you can leverage and we can leverage to then drive destinations.
Excellent. And we'll make this our last question because we promised we'd get you out of here at 11:40 and it's already 11:44. So Brett, this one's for you. It's a follow-up to your response, and is the events that you talk about, will they become causals? Will they be impacting the forecasting capabilities? Brett, you somehow got on mute.
Apologies, I muted myself again. So that's an excellent question. Again, most of the events that we're going to be seeing are triggers of normal demand and normal operations. So things like we've received a transfer order and our operational inventory at a store has gone up, or a sale has happened, or an online sale has happened. So these aren't necessarily causals in that regard. They're not those types of events. That said, we can see specific exceptional levels of demand come through as event causals. So being able to recognize those and being able to see those as and identify them as exceptional demand is something that we can do. But what we're talking about in as far as events are more the normal course of business, but then just how they happen rather than a reconciliation at the end of the day. Events streaming in, the truck arrived, we checked in the inventory, scanned it in the back room. Those are all events. And those are the type of things that we want to be able to track to then let you know exactly how it impacts your overall supply chain health.
All right, excellent. Well, we're going to wrap it here. Let me just say thank you for staying with us. I'm kind of shocked. We've had only 2 people drop off from the start to the finish. So clearly there is a lot of interest in the topic. And I know that Brett and Sahil and Ina would love to meet with everybody who's on this call to talk about this and to go deeper and to better understand your challenges and situations and help you, right? And maybe the help are some of these solutions, maybe it's other help that we can provide.